This is Devrak Ozil, Communications Operator, Colony of Surathopban, Relay Station 7. The timestamp on this transmission is 047 local, and I am recording because that is the only thing left I know how to do. The hymn started 3 days ago. I want to be precise about that, because whoever receives this file, if anyone receives this file, should understand the timeline. The Kelhari choir's advance signal reached our outer atmospheric relay on the evening of the 3rd. By the morning of the 4th, it was in the mid-band frequencies we use for colony-wide emergency broadcast. By the evening of the 4th 40, Su-0 colonists had stopped answering their comms. Not all of them at once. That is the part that stays with me. It was gradual. First the outer settlements, then the farming rings, then the residential blocks closer to the relay towers. And if you were watching the check-in board in this room, you watched the lights go from green to amber to dark, one cluster at a time, over about 18 hours. Like watching a tide. I have noise-canceling equipment in this station. That is the only reason I am still myself. Shh. I have read the Kelhari choir's doctrine in the archive records. It does not sound, written down, like something that should work. It is a resonance conversion signal, transmitted at specific harmonic frequencies that interact with certain neural architecture. And the thing is, almost every sapient species the choir has encountered shares enough of that architecture for the signal to take hold. The choir does not invade. It does not field armies. It does not negotiate or threaten or demand. It sings, and then what used to be a population is part of the choir, and the choir is larger, and it sings somewhere else. 41 worlds. That is the number in the last archive entry I could find before our external comms were cut. 41 worlds converted through signal, no shots fired, no hull lost, no resistance that lasted more than a week. Choir does not consider this conquest. It considers it propagation. I have read their doctrine on that point too, and I want to be honest. It is not written by entities that believe they are doing harm. It reads like a faith. It reads like something you would follow if you had not watched the lights go dark on your check-in board, one cluster at a time. At 0340 this morning, the choir's relay arcs entered low orbit. I counted 7 of them on the station's passive array. Before the array started returning corrupted data, the hymn gets into electronics too, eventually, which is something the archive records mention as a footnote, and which I now understand is not a note. 7 arcs, each approximately 600 meters, arranged in a ring formation above the primary population centers. Standard Kelhari deployment pattern, according to the archives. They do not descend further. They do not need to. The signal is already doing the work. I sent a distress burst at 0342. I do not know if it got through the jamming. I sent it anyway, because that is the protocol, and because I have been following protocol since the lights started going dark, and it is the only thing keeping me from going to the door of this station and opening it and walking out into the hymn like everyone else did. I want to go out. I want to tell you that clearly. The signal does not feel like an attack. That is the most frightening thing about it. It feels like relief. It feels like putting something heavy down. I have had my noise-canceling equipment running for 71 hours, and my head hurts, and I am tired. And there is a part of me that keeps pointing out that the door is right there, and the hymn is right there, and the people I worked with for 6 years are out there somewhere in it, and they sound, when I can hear them through the exterior sensors, they are at peace. I am staying at my post because someone has to transmit. At 049, the passive array returned, one clear reading before the corruption took it again. I ran the reading 3 times to confirm it, because I did not trust my own eyes at that hour, in that state. Transit fold emergence. 17 contacts. Outer system, bearing 7 by 220, inbound at a velocity I could not fully resolve before the array went dark again. 17 contacts. The Kelhari choir came to Surathopban with 7 relay arcs and 41 worlds of precedent, and a signal that had never failed to convert a nation. They came because the signal works. They came because nothing has ever stopped the signal. They came because they've been propagating for longer than our colony has existed, and in all of that time, no one has shown them a reason to arrive. Anything more than 7 arcs and a hymn. At 4:14, the hymn changed. I noticed it through the noise-canceling equipment as a shift in the frequency pattern. The choir signal is not static. It modulates based on resistance and population density and a dozen other variables I am not qualified to analyze. But I have been listening to it for 3 days, and I know its rhythms. And at 0414, it shifted into a register I had not heard before. Faster, more layered, urgent. If that word applies to something that is not quite music and not quite language. The Kelhari choir was afraid. I did not understand that at 0414. I understand it now, writing this at 0417, because at 0416, the exterior visual sensors on the station's roof gave me 4 seconds of clear feed before they went offline, and in those 4 seconds I saw the sky above Surathoban. 17 hulls. Each one 2.8 kilometers of black alloy, running no signal, no broadcast, no hymn of their own, running silence, which, against the choir's pervasive frequency wash, was itself a kind of statement. They had come out of transit fold at outer system range and crossed the distance in something under 7 minutes, which meant they had not decelerated. They came in hot, the way you come in when you have done this before, and you know exactly how long it takes and calculated the solution, and you are not interested in anything the other party has to say. The hull markings were not visible at that resolution. What was visible was the formation, spread wide, each ship holding a line of approach that corresponded to one of the choir's 7 relay arcs, and 2 ships covering angles I couldn't immediately account for. And then I understood. Those 2 were positioned for the arcs that might try to run. They had planned for the arcs trying to run. They had accounted for it before they dropped from fold. The Pale Armada. That is what I am calling them in this record. Because the hulls had a pale running light configuration I could see even at distance. A cold blue-white that the choir's warm spectrum signal made look, in the sensor feed, almost ghostly. I do not know their designation. I do not know if they received my distress burst, or if they were already coming. I do not know if there is a difference. At 0417, first relay arc went silent. I mean that literally. The frequency it had been broadcasting on, a strong mid-range carrier signal that had been consistent for 3 days, dropped nothing. Not jammed, not degraded, gone, the way a transmitter goes silent when the transmitter no longer exists. I am writing this in real time now. I am going to keep writing. 04. 17 plus 40 seconds, a second arc frequency drops. 0482 2 more, simultaneously. The hymn is ragged now. I can hear it even through the noise canceling. And it is ragged. The 4 remaining arcs are trying to compensate, pushing their signal harder, and the pitch has shifted into something that sounds, for the first time in 3 days, like it is trying very hard. The Kelhari choir has never had to try. That is not a criticism. It is a fact of 41 worlds. It has never had to try because nothing has ever required effort from it. 0419, a 5th frequency drops. Then, 11 seconds later, a 6th. The hymn is nearly gone. What is left is 1 arc broadcasting at maximum output. And it sounds, I want to be accurate here, it sounds thin. It sounds like a very loud thing that has become aware it is no longer the loudest thing in the area. 420, silence. Total silence. The first time in 71 hours. I took my noise-canceling equipment off, and I sat in the silence, and I could hear the station's ventilation, cycling, and I could hear my own breathing, and nothing else. No hymn, no carrier frequencies, no signal. 22 minutes. The Kelhari choir arrived at Surathoban with 7 relay arcs and 41 worlds of unbroken precedent, and a faith in the signal that had once been tested. The Pale Armada answered that faith in 22 minutes, and I sat in the silence, and I could not think of a single thing to say that was large enough for what had just happened. Somewhere outside, 40,000 people are waking up. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how long the conversion holds after the signal stops, or if it reverses. What you feel when the hymn you were inside for 3 days simply isn't there anymore. The archive records don't cover this. The archive records don't cover this because there is no prior instance in 41 worlds of the signal stopping. I am going to open the station door, not because I am going out into the hymn is gone. To open the station door, because the exterior sensors are showing me something I want to see with my own eyes, and the door is right there, and I have been in this room for 71 hours. and I am done with protocol. The shadow of the nearest hull has crossed the station. It is not blocking the sun. It is too high for that, still holding at altitude, but it is visible in the early morning as a shape against the sky. Darker than the sky, 2.8 kilometers of black alloy that came when the distress burst asked, and arrived before we could hope and destroyed 7 relay. 22 minutes and has not broadcast a single word the entire time. I am going to go outside, and I am going to look up. This is Devrak Ozil, Relay Station 7, Surath Oban. The hymn is over. We are still here.